Hi, my dearest family. Here is your kind of a weekly forecast, a shortened version of it. We are going to be discussing from the 18th of December until the 27th of December. I'm going to be sharing the screen so I can walk you through exactly what is happening the week ahead of us. I have chosen to look at a little bit of a longer period because we have got basically three aspect patterns forming. And we want to be discussing that. Now, if you would like to have a longer version, then you might want to consider joining my YouTube membership program or kind of like a Patreon system, which is available on my website. And I'll give you breakdown for all rising signs as well. Last week, for example, I made 30 minutes video average for each rising sign because of course we have got this Mars squaring Saturn and Neptune energy and then I and a Mercury and Uranus opposition as well. So I really wanted to break it down for everyone, how to use it in the bestest possible way. And just a reminder, I've got a charity webinar coming up on the 27th of December. I would be eternally grateful if you helped my cause. This is going to be a presentation connected to oppositions and my new discoveries about what the oppositions are actually really representing in our chart. So if you can do that, it would be much of a pleasure. Also, if you can share, for example, this charity cause with others, that might also be super helpful. But let's have a look at what is happening. So we've got 18th of December, and Venus is in the sign of Sagittarius. Oh, sorry, we are on the wrong date. So let me just adjust that one. So we are on the 18th of December, and then Venus is actually forming a trine to Chiron. Then we are moving a day forward, a couple of days forward, and then we can see that Venus is actually making a square to Saturn. So that's happening on the 20th of December. Then we are moving forward, and then we can see that Venus on the 23rd of December is going to be forming a quincunx with Uranus. Now, this is important because Venus is disposing Uranus, of course. And then on the very same day, Venus is running into a square with Neptune as well, 23rd or the 24th of December, depending on where you are. And then Venus moves into the sign of Capricorn. So obviously these are happening between the 18th to the 25th of December, but kind of like they are built on each other. So that's why I decided to kind of like do the presentation this way so you know where things are coming from. So let's just have a look at, Venus, which is our focal point. And Venus represents values, relationship, beauty, finance. Um, and it's on the final degrees now of Sagittarius, which is the representation of freedom, truth, expansion, belief. And of course, she is pretty much clashing with all outer planets. Well, apart from Pluto, really. Before it's going to be making its pragmatic move into the sign of Capricorn, which is going to be about structure, ambition, commitment, our long-term goals. So we've got Venus in Sagittarius trining Chiron first, which is giving you a moment of healing through making potentially bold connections with others. The Sagittarian desire for truth, for example, in relationships, can find an easy outlet for healing old Aries wounds. So, what are the Aries wounds? It's around self assertion, independence, pioneering efforts, the right to exist, the right to act, the courage, and of course, as well as anger. So maybe it becomes easier to talk about what you value, what makes you feel worthy. Using this discussion to soothe pain around, for example, feeling unloved or feeling kind of like broken in a way, financially or even emotionally as well, or feeling inadequate. So the keywords here are going to be healing the self-worth, affirming beliefs, and being like courage in vulnerability. And I think often that is a huge one, right? The courage and vulnerability, because we are humans and we don't want to admit that something hurts. We want to be a lot stronger than what we are. And that's often the key message with Chiron in the sign of Aries anyway. So, like I said, then we are moving a couple of days forward, and then Venus is in square 20 or the 21st of December, depending on where you are. Venus is going to be in square to Saturn. And this is a classic signature of a reality check, you know. This is obviously, we still have got that very optimistic, free spirited Sagittarius Venus who runs into this heavy limiting wall in the sign of Pisces, which of course deals with boundaries, faith, and illusion. So relationships and finances might feel restricted, confusing, or disappointing. You might have to confront a serious commitment or a lack of structure, for example. Obviously, in an area you were being too optimistic about. So this could be, of course, finances, love, but also you're going to have to be looking at where Venus is transiting you right now. So this might be bringing up some financial restrictions, having to create boundaries in our relationship, or the reality can become super disappointing as well. Or kind of like we are looking at whether the commitments are there. So it's a commitment test as well. As a side note, Venus is actually making a conjunction to Juno as well at the same time, which is surely a relational energy, whether we are able to commit to someone on a romantic level. And maybe we have got the fears with Saturn being involved, or we have got doubts about our finances, our love life, and so on. Then we are moving forward, and then we can see that Venus is actually in quincunx to Uranus retrograde. And like I said at the beginning of this mini reading, is that Venus is disposing Uranus. So this is actually an important aspect here. And this aspect demands adjustments, uncomfortable adjustments in our values around finances. The Sagittarian believes about freedom in love and spending money, for example. It can feel out of sync with the need for security and the change and the upgrade, in your own material world. So there may be a sudden urge to break free financially or an unexpected demand in relationships, and you're going to have to be adjusting or redefining what you truly value. So this might be bringing sudden value shifts, uncomfortable relationship demands, financial instabilities, potentially a relationship breakup, or suddenly we can actually meet someone completely new as well. Because remember, previously Venus was squaring Saturn, and we also mentioned that we had to be dealing with our fears when it comes to being loved and unity and to give kind of like love to others as well. And on the very same day, Venus is running into a square with Neptune. And this is a super overly romantic aspect, but it can be super deceptive as well. Neptune dissolves boundaries and the square creates the confusion basically. So maybe we're going to have to look into the mirror and seeing whether we have over idealized a relationship or a financial prospect, seeing what you see rather than the truth. It's there is a risk here, unfortunately, of feeling misled or allowing wishful thinking to cloud your judgment. It could indicate such things as I don't feel that I truly deserve something, or it could be kind of like a sudden awakening as well that the relationship that I had over romanticized or kind of like over fantasized, it's not what it is. So the keywords with that aspect is about illusions in love, financial deception. We need to be careful. Obviously, we are around Christmas, so it's very easy to get deceived. This Saturn surely is asking us to take off the rose-colored glasses, And Neptune is kind of like put it back on. But because Neptune went direct recently, it is gaining more and more clarity. Like, oh, I still wear those bloody rose-colored glasses. I have to take them off. And then Venus, just a couple of days after, it enters the sign of Capricorn. So there is a shift from fire to earth. So, we had these emotional and financial challenges, and then Venus starts to calm down. It gets more serious. Relationships become about long-term potentials, or let's structure it, let's respect each other. We're no longer chasing the next grand adventure like we did in the sign of Sagittarius. You are asking, like, is it sustainable? Is this responsible? Spending can become a little bit more conservative. Love is expressed through commitment, more practical support. So this Venus is gonna get committed when it comes to money. Let's save money. Let's make this relationship work. Now we're gonna go back because the next aspect pattern we've got starts on the 19th of December. And that is going to be connected to Sun and Mercury. So first stop is the Sun. Sun is the sign in the sign of Sagittarius. As you can see, on the 20th, it's gonna be in quincunx to Uranus. Then, of course, it is squaring Neptune as well. And then the Sun moves into the sign of Capricorn. So, it's very similar to Venus's path, right? Just but the Sun is about ego, the purpose, the core self. To a certain extent, it represents your vitality as well. So again, that very Sagittarian confidence and the optimism, we have to make adjustments around it. Again, maybe we are not as confident anymore about our material life or even our comfort. Taurus rules comfort. Your sense of purpose runs into a bit of confusion, idealism, even lethargy as well, unfortunately. It can feel like that Neptune is kind of like sucking the vitality out of our life. And the sun already ran into certain type of blockages with Saturn being in the picture, which I have also spoke about briefly last week. But in the weekly forecast, I spoke about it a lot because Sun and Juno conjunction happened, and both of them at the same time were squaring Saturn as well. So your sense of purpose kind of runs into confusion. That could be an indication that I am doubting the path that I am on. I'm completely maybe off the path. And if that's the case, Sun and Saturn square already kind of showed you that. And there is a temptation here to run away, to escape reality. But the sun is going to move into the sign of Capricorn, and at the end of the day, it looks like that you cannot escape. That is going to talk to you about, yes, let's set achievable, tangible goals. You know, there's a bit of an identity crisis happening at the beginning of the week. We are seeking clarity. We have to be making material adjustments, but then we become a lot more responsible. Obviously, Mars is paving the road there already, right? So that's super exciting. And then now the Sun is joining the club, and then Venus will join the club. And then the following week, Juno will join as well. So moving back again a couple of days, we are on the 19th, right? So Mercury. Sorry, we are not on the 19th. We are right here. On the 20th, sorry. Mercury is in Sagittarius squaring the nodes. The North Node in the sign of Pisces and the South Node in the sign of Virgo. So your mind is at a crossroad. Of course, this Mercury has got this big vision. This Mercury is preaching or is trying to tell the truth or it's trying to expand the knowledge. But this is running into uh, a conflict with destiny. it kind of like indicates that our current thinking is being questioned. It's at a karmic choice point. You have to make a choice. What are the choices? Do I fall back on the Virgo South Node habits of overanalyzing, nitpicking details, or worry? Or do I consciously step towards the Pisces North Node, let's say by communicating with empathy, compassion, trusting your intuition over rigid logic? So you have got something to say. You have got a vision to communicate. And am I gonna and it might be a tough vision, it might be something tough that you want to talk about. And do I do that? Or do I kind of like try to master or perfect the words so that I don't hurt the feelings of others? And this might be a communication that you have to be having with a family member. Obviously, the dispositor of Mercury is in is Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. So, but we have to listen to our intuition, we're gonna have to embrace those intuitive thoughts. And then Mercury moves a little bit forward. So we are moving a little bit forward, actually quite a lot. On the 27th, you can see that Mercury is going to be enshrined to Chiron. And these are healing conversations that we are having. So we had conversations before as well where we made a choice. Dependent on which one you chose, which path you went down on. If you went down on the Virgo South Node, which is highly possible, by the way, because Mercury disposes the South Node, so that's a lot more comfortable. And Mercury is in a natural quincunx position to Jupiter. So it feels like many of us are going to be choosing the Virgo path. But then we are having, uh, a healing conversation. Your mind is now tapping into that courage to speak openly about your pain, to share your healing truth with others. So this could be a brilliant time to gain insight and, for example, offer advice, that is both direct as well as therapeutic. So speaking the truth heals. Speaking about, vulnerability, that heals. Um, recently, I mentioned it somewhere before, but I don't think it was public. But I've got a friend of mine with a Virgo rising sign, and we had this conversation recently, and then she said it's very interesting because since the nodes went to the sign of Virgo and Pisces, she had to learn that every single opinion matters, even when it feels like they are attacking us. And I'm just stepping away and I'm telling them, listen, I need a little bit more time to process what you said. Currently, I cannot see the truth in it, but let me think about it and I come back to you on that. And then she sits down and then she thinks about it and then she realizes that, oh, wow, actually, there is truth in what has been said. And I didn't look at that perspective. So, and that's a beautiful analog with a Virgo rising sign where I give up the need of controlling, or I give up, kind of like, in a way, feeling attacked or having to kind of like nitpick or kind of like making judgments. And that's, of course, Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius. I'll think about it. Let me see the bigger picture. Mercury in Sagittarius. So, to kind of like, these are the aspect patterns that are happening next week, but let me kind of like bring them together. Obviously, one of the focus area looks like it's relationship and self-worth. It might be telling us that we have to stop chasing the ideal partner, and that could be the Sagittarius and Neptune triggers, or being too optimistic about unstable situations that it's gonna work out. Venus moving into the sign of Capricorn is gonna make you realize that we have to put the work in, things are not gonna disappear just themselves. So we can use that Venus in Capricorn energy to define clear, measurable expectations. Like, does this person or situation build my long-term security or not? What's your answer? There is also finances that are potentially a topic for this week. The Venus Saturn and Venus Neptune squares force you to see where you have been a little bit lenient financially, for example. And we can use again that Venus in Capricorn to create a strict budget or more of an ambitious budget. Let's focus on saving, investing conservatively, and let's pay debts back, for example. And this is also a reminder there is no such things as quick wins. We're going to have to roll up the sleeves and we're going to have to work for it. It looks like another topic is our sense of purpose. The sun enters Capricorn, shifting your focus from what you believe to what you build. So set one simple, measurable, achievable goal, for the next 4 to 6 weeks and work it through, and then let's see where it takes you. The other area of life that is going to be impacting you is communication and mindset, of course. This is telling you to speak with compassion. That's Mercury and the nodal squares. Often Sagittarius just wants to be right. And maybe we have to be kind of like giving up on that, giving way to that Piscean need for empathy, forgiveness, and understanding that the truth comes with, two sides or multiple sides, of course. So maybe you wanna be asking a question, is this comment helpful or compassionate, or am I just trying to win? And we can utilize that Mercury Chiron trine to honestly share what you feel, because that might be bringing you the solution. There is the healing and the change department as well that is very active in the next 10 days. And this might be a reminder that we shouldn't be resisting the unexpected changes. We need to welcome them. We have to be integrating them into our routine, or instead, we can use the Venus Mercury trine to Chiron in Aries to assert ourselves kind of cleanly, you know, um, in the faces of these changes. And healing is going to come from taking decisive, self-respecting actions, not necessarily from just avoiding or analyzing every single, like every single situation that we want to be analyzing. So, like I said, this is a brief weekly forecast reading. I hope it helps. Do let me know in the chat box below. And if you would like a little bit more detailed version of it, how it might be affecting you on a personal level, then you might want to consider joining my Patreon club. As well as, like I said at the beginning, I would appreciate if you looked at my charity cause and considering supporting me. So have a lovely week, everyone, and I will see you after Christmas. So Merry Christmas.